Understanding the cost of printing small quantities of t-shirts for startup brands. As a startup looking to launch your own printed t-shirt brand, you may be excited about the creative possibilities and potential profits. However, it is important to understand that printing or manufacturing small quantities of t-shirts can be more expensive than you might think. In this video, we will explain in simple language why printing small quantities of t-shirts can be costly, and shed light on the various factors that contribute to the pricing. Screen printing, which is a popular method for printing t-shirts, involves several steps, including creating screens, setting up the machines, and applying the ink to the fabric. One of the primary costs in screen printing is the creation of screens, which are used to transfer the design onto the t-shirt. Each design requires a separate screens, depending on colors, and screens can be expensive to create, especially if you have multiple designs or color variations. Setup time is another cost to consider. When printing small quantities of t-shirts, the setup time required for each job can be relatively high. This includes the time taken to set up the printing press, align the screens, mix the inks, and adjust the settings to ensure accurate printing. The setup time is spread across a smaller number of t-shirts, making the cost per t-shirt higher compared to printing larger quantities, where the setup time can be amortized over a larger production run. Machine time is also a significant factor in the cost of printing small quantities. Printing machines have a production capacity, which means they can only print a certain number of t-shirts in a given time frame. When printing small quantities, the machines may not run at full capacity, resulting in a higher cost per t-shirt due to the lower volume of production. Labor cost is another consideration. Screen printing requires skilled labor to operate the machines, set up the screens, and ensure quality control. When printing small quantities, the labor cost per t-shirt can be higher, as the labor is spread across fewer t-shirts, compared to larger production runs where the cost can be distributed over a larger number of units. Establishment cost is an overhead expense that needs to be factored in. This includes the costs of running a screen printing and embroidery service, such as rent for the facility, utilities, maintenance of machines, and other operational costs. These costs are spread across the production run. And when printing small quantities, the establishment cost per t-shirt can be higher. Ink wastage is also a consideration in screen printing. Ink is used to transfer the design onto the t-shirt, and excess ink is often wasted during the process, especially when printing small quantities. The cost of ink wastage per t-shirt can add up, making the printing process more expensive for smaller production runs. In addition to the factors mentioned above, there may be other costs, such as shipping, packaging, handling, and overheads associated with running a business, that needs to be considered when pricing small quantities of printed t-shirts. It is important to note that larger brands have the advantage of economies of scale, as they print larger quantities of t-shirts, which allows them to spread the costs over a larger production run and lower the cost per t-shirt. Startups, on the other hand, do not have the same volume of production, and the costs are distributed over a smaller number of t-shirts, making the per unit cost higher. In conclusion, printing or manufacturing small quantities of t-shirts for startup brands can be more expensive due to various factors, including the cost of screens, setup time, machine time, labor cost, establishment cost, ink wastage, and other overheads. It is important for startups to understand these dynamics and factor them into their pricing strategy to ensure that they are accurately accounting for the costs associated with small quantity printing. While it may be tempting to compare pricing with larger brands, it is important to recognize that economies of scale play a significant role in the pricing difference. To manage the costs of small quantity printing, startups can consider a few strategies. One option is to focus on simpler designs with fewer colors, which can reduce the number of screens required and minimize setup time. Consolidating orders and printing in larger batches can also help spread the costs over a larger production run, reducing the cost per t-shirt. Understanding the cost dynamics of screen printing and embroidery for small quantities of t-shirts is crucial for startups looking to launch their own brand. It is important to account for factors such as screens, setup time, machine time, labor cost, establishment cost, ink wastage, and other overheads when pricing your products. By considering these factors and implementing Effective cost management strategies. Startups can better plan and budget for their printing needs, minimize risks, and set realistic pricing for their products. In conclusion, while small quantity printing of t-shirts for startup brands may seem straightforward, it involves various costs that can impact the overall pricing. Startups need to understand and account for these costs to avoid underestimating the true expenses of screen printing and embroidery. By doing so, startups can make informed decisions, manage their costs effectively, and set pricing that reflects the true value of their products. Remember, it is not just about comparing prices with larger brands, but rather understanding the unique dynamics of small quantity printing to ensure a successful and sustainable business venture.